Have you ever had one moment, one simple choice, that changed everything? Before you continue watching, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more incredible stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about life, love, and the unexpected ways our paths intertwine. This is the story of James Calloway, a hardworking single dad whose act of kindness toward his intoxicated boss led to a question that would unravel the carefully constructed reality he'd built for himself and his daughter. The rain pounded against the windshield as James gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white with tension. In the passenger seat, Elizabeth Parker, his normally composed, intimidating boss, was slumped against the window, mumbling incoherently after the company's anniversary celebration. He never could have imagined that driving her home would lead to a revelation that would tear his world apart by the seams. James Calloway had been walking a tightrope for the past 7 years. At 35, he had the weathered eyes of someone who had seen too much too soon. His daughter Lily was his entire world, a precocious 6-year-old with her mother's smile and curious eyes that seemed to absorb everything around her. James had been raising her alone since his wife Sarah's death during childbirth, a tragedy that had hollowed him out and rebuilt him into someone stronger yet infinitely more cautious. Working as a senior financial analyst at Parker Industries wasn't James's dream job, but it paid the bills and offered the stability that Lily needed. He kept his head down, did exemplary work, and tried to avoid office politics. Elizabeth Parker had been CEO for 3 years, brilliant, demanding, and notoriously private. Most employees feared her cutting intelligence and exacting standards, but James had earned her respect through consistent performance and unwavering reliability. The company's 10th anniversary celebration was in full swing when James noticed Elizabeth by the bar, uncharacteristically ordering her 3rd martini. Her usual composed demeanor was slipping, her laugh a little too loud, her gestures slightly too expansive. When she nearly fell attempting to stand, James instinctively moved toward her, catching her elbow before anyone else noticed. "Ms. Parker, are you all right?" he asked quietly, ensuring no one could overhear. She looked at him with unfocused eyes. "James. The reliable one." Her words were slightly slurred. "Always, always where you need to be." "I think it might be time to call it a night," he suggested gently. "Can I arrange a car for you?" Elizabeth's face hardened momentarily, a flash of her usual self breaking through. "No. No drivers. No paper trail. Can't have anyone seeing." She trailed off, looking suddenly vulnerable. James checked his watch. Mrs. Hernandez, his elderly neighbor who watched Lily during late nights, had agreed to stay until midnight. It was only 10:30 p.m. He made a split-second decision. "I can drive you home, Miss Parker. No one will notice if we leave separately." Relief flooded her face. "You're a good man, James. Better than most know." That comment struck him as odd, but he dismissed it as the alcohol talking. 20 minutes later, they were in his 10-year-old sedan, Elizabeth giving slurred directions to her upscale apartment building on the other side of the city. The rain had started suddenly, a torrential downpour that matched the growing unease in James's chest. Elizabeth had fallen silent, occasionally murmuring words he couldn't quite catch. Something about, should tell him, and right to know. When they arrived at her building, James helped her inside, supporting her weight as they rode the elevator to the penthouse floor. He hesitated at her door, unsure of the protocol for ensuring your intoxicated boss gets safely inside without crossing professional boundaries. Elizabeth fumbled with her keys, dropping them twice before James gently took them and opened the door. Her apartment was immaculate but surprisingly warm, not the sterile showcase he might have expected. Photos lined the hallway, though in the dim light, he couldn't make out the faces. "Let me get you some water," James said, helping her to the couch. He found the kitchen and filled a glass, bringing it back to find Elizabeth staring at him intently, a strange lucidity in her eyes despite her inebriated state. "You have her smile," she said cryptically. "I should have seen it sooner." James frowned, confused. "I'm sorry." "Nothing. Elizabeth waved her hand dismissively, then winced, holding her head. I'm going to regret this tomorrow. Thank you for bringing me home. Of course. Will you be all right now? I need to get home to my daughter. At the mention of Lily, something shifted in Elizabeth's expression, pain, longing, or perhaps just nausea from the alcohol. Your daughter? Yes. Go to her. But James? Yes? Can you come by my office tomorrow? Early, before everyone else arrives? The request surprised him, but he nodded. I'll be there at 7:30. Elizabeth nodded, already sinking back against the cushions. Lock the door on your way out. Driving home through the rain, James couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had happened, though he couldn't pinpoint what. Mrs. Hernandez reported that Lily had been angelic, falling asleep clutching the photo of Sarah that James kept on her nightstand. He paid the kind woman and checked on his daughter, brushing a gentle kiss against her forehead before retreating to his small living room. On the coffee table sat the stack of bills he'd been avoiding, medical expenses from Lily's recent bout with pneumonia, the notice about his rent increase, and the letter from the prestigious private school that had offered Lily a partial scholarship. Even with the scholarship, the remaining tuition was beyond his means, but he couldn't bear to deny his brilliant daughter the education she deserved. He'd been working on a plan to take a second job, though he worried about having even less time with Lily. Sleep came fitfully that night, haunted by dreams of Sarah and strange, disconnected images of Elizabeth Parker looking at him with knowing eyes, saying, "You have her smile." Morning arrived with the harsh buzz of his alarm at 5:30 a.m. James moved through his routine mechanically, shower, coffee, preparing Lily's lunch, waking her gently and helping her dress for school. Mrs. Hernandez arrived at 6:45 to take Lily to school, giving James just enough time to reach Elizabeth's office by 7:30. The office building was nearly empty when he arrived. James straightened his tie nervously as he rode the elevator to the executive floor. What if Elizabeth didn't remember asking him to come? Worse, what if she was embarrassed about her condition and took it out on him? To his surprise, Elizabeth was already at her desk, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, hair perfectly arranged, no sign of a hangover except perhaps a slightly tighter set to her jaw. She looked up when he knocked on her open door. James. Thank you for coming. Her voice was controlled, professional, but with an undercurrent of tension he'd never heard before. Of course, Miss Parker. About last night. Please, sit down, she interrupted, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. As he sat, she continued, I want to apologize for putting you in that position. It was unprofessional of me. It's not a problem, he assured her. We all have moments. That wasn't just a moment, James. It was a culmination. Elizabeth stood suddenly, walking to the window that overlooked the city. I've been carrying something for a very long time. Something that concerns you. James felt his mouth go dry. Was he being fired? Had he unknowingly made a mistake on one of the reports? Elizabeth turned back to face him, her expression unreadable. Tell me about your wife, James. The question caught him completely off guard. In 7 years at the company, he'd never discussed Sarah with anyone except in the vaguest terms. My wife? She passed away. When our daughter was born. Sarah Calloway, née Mitchell. You met at Westridge University. Married after graduation. She was studying art history, you were in finance. The hairs on the back of James's neck stood up. How do you know that? Elizabeth's gaze was steady, piercing. Sarah wasn't just studying art history, was she, James? She was also taking pre-med courses. She had plans to apply to medical school. James felt as though the floor was tilting beneath him. Nobody knew about Sarah's medical school ambitions, she'd kept them private, worried about disappointing her family of artists if she changed direction. Who are you? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elizabeth took a deep breath. I'm Sarah's sister. The words hung in the air between them, impossible, incomprehensible. James shook his head. No. Sarah was an only child. She told me everything about her family. Half-sister, Elizabeth clarified, her composure finally cracking. Same father, different mothers. Richard Mitchell had an affair with my mother long before he met Sarah's mother. I was raised by my mother alone in Chicago. Sarah never knew about me. Our father made sure of that. James gripped the arms of his chair, feeling as though he might float away if he let go. This is impossible. Is it? Elizabeth reached into her desk drawer and removed a photograph, sliding it across to him. This is my mother and father, taken the summer before he left us. With trembling hands, James picked up the photo. The man was unmistakably Richard Mitchell, Sarah's father, younger, but with the same distinctive cleft chin and heavy eyebrows. The woman beside him was a stranger, but her smile. You have her smile, James repeated Elizabeth's words from the night before, understanding dawning. You meant your mother's smile. You think I have your mother's smile? Elizabeth nodded. When you first started working here, I noticed a resemblance to Richard, but I dismissed it as coincidence. I didn't make the connection to Sarah Mitchell until last year when I overheard you mention your late wife to a colleague. I've been investigating since then. Investigating me? James stood abruptly. What gives you the right to dig into my private life? She was my sister, James. Elizabeth's cool facade finally shattered completely. A sister I never got to meet because our father was a coward who compartmentalized his life. When I learned she had died, that she had a daughter, my niece, I couldn't just ignore it. James felt the room spinning. So last night, getting drunk, having me drive you home, was that all an act? Elizabeth's eyes flashed with genuine hurt. No. I've been agonizing over how to tell you for months. The alcohol was liquid courage that backfired. James paced the office, running his hands through his hair. This is... I don't even know what this is. If what you're saying is true. It is. I have DNA tests to prove it. He stopped, staring at her. You tested our DNA? How? Elizabeth had the grace to look ashamed. The company health screening last year. I had the lab run a separate comparison with my sample. That's illegal, James said flatly. Yes. She didn't attempt to justify it. James sank back into the chair, his mind racing. If Elizabeth was truly Sarah's half-sister, that made her Lily's aunt. Family. After years of it being just the two of them, suddenly Lily had family she'd never known existed. Why now? He finally asked. Why tell me at all? Elizabeth returned to her chair, her professional demeanor reasserting itself though her eyes remained vulnerable. I saw the application for Westwood Academy in your personnel file when HR was processing your request for flexible hours. I know what tuition costs there, even with a scholarship. James stiffened. I don't need your charity. It's not charity, James. It's family. Elizabeth leaned forward. Sarah never got to follow her dreams of becoming a doctor. Let me help her daughter have every opportunity. And what's the price for this generosity? Weekend visits? Shared custody? James couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. No price. Just a chance to know her. To be in her life in whatever way you're comfortable with. Elizabeth's voice softened. I never had siblings growing up. I never thought I'd be an aunt. Finding out about Sarah, about Lily, it's changed something in me. James closed his eyes, trying to process everything. The practical side of him recognized what this could mean for Lily: financial security, educational opportunities, extended family. But the protective father in him recoiled at the intrusion, the violation of privacy, the appending of their carefully constructed life. "I need time," he finally said. "And proof. Real proof, not just your word and a convenient photograph." Elizabeth nodded. "I understand. Take all the time you need. The offer stands regardless." As James rose to leave, one final question nagged at him. "Last night, you said I was better than most know. What did you mean?" Elizabeth's expression softened slightly. "In my research, I spoke with several of Sarah's old friends. They all said the same thing, that you were the one who encouraged her to pursue medicine despite her family's expectations. That you were willing to work extra jobs to support her through medical school." She paused. "You were going to sacrifice your own dreams for hers." James felt a lump in his throat. "She would have done the same for me. That kind of love is rare, James. The kind that puts someone else's dreams ahead of your own." Elizabeth's voice was quiet but intense. "Lily deserves to know that about her mother. About you." James left the office in a daze, calling in sick for the first time in his 7 years with the company. He spent the day at the public library, researching Elizabeth Parker's background, looking for inconsistencies in her story. Instead, he found old newspaper clippings from Chicago mentioning Eleanor Parker and her daughter Elizabeth, alongside business reports of Richard Mitchell's frequent trips to the Windy City during the exact timeframe Elizabeth had described. By the time he picked up Lily from school, his world had been irrevocably altered. As his daughter chattered about her day, James studied her features with new eyes. He'd always seen Sarah in her smile, her laugh, the way she tilted her head when concentrating. Now he could see traces of Elizabeth too, the determined set of her jaw, the analytical gleam in her eyes when solving problems. "Daddy, why are you looking at me funny?" Lily asked as they walked home. James squeezed her hand. "Just thinking about how much you remind me of your mom sometimes." Lily beamed. She loved hearing about Sarah. "Tell me a story about her. Please." James took a deep breath. "Actually, I have a new story today. One about your mom's family." "Grandma and Grandpa Mitchell?" Lily asked, referring to Sarah's parents who had passed away years before she was born. "No, sweetheart. It's about someone we didn't know about before. Someone who might become very important in our lives." Over the next several weeks, James cautiously allowed Elizabeth into their lives. First, a DNA test, properly conducted through a reputable lab, confirmed her relation to Lily. Then came carefully planned meetings, lunch at a neutral restaurant, an afternoon at the Children's Museum, a walk in the park. Elizabeth proved to be naturally good with Lily, neither overbearing nor falsely enthusiastic, respecting the child's initial shyness while engaging her curiosity. James observed them together, watching for any red flags, any indication that Elizabeth's interest was superficial or conditional. Instead, he saw a genuine connection forming, witnessed Lily blooming under her aunt's attentive interest in her stories and ideas. 2 months after Elizabeth's revelation, James found himself sitting on a bench in the park, watching Elizabeth push Lily on the swings, their laughter carrying across the playground. Mrs. Hernandez settled beside him, her wise eyes taking in the scene. "She is good for the little one," the elderly woman observed. "And for you too, I think." James turned to her, surprised. "For me?" Mrs. Hernandez nodded sagely. 7 years you have carried everything alone. Every decision, every worry, every moment of joy, all on your shoulders. Now there is someone else who loves her, who shares the weight. James hadn't thought of it that way. He'd been so focused on protecting Lily, on maintaining control over their little world, that he hadn't recognized how exhausting it had been to be her everything. "I didn't expect any of this," he admitted. "Life rarely gives us what we expect," Mrs. Hernandez replied. "But sometimes, it gives us what we need." Later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed, James called Elizabeth. "I've made a decision," he said without preamble. "I'm accepting your offer to help with Lily's education." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Thank you for trusting me, James. There's a condition," he continued. "I don't want her to grow up thinking money solves everything. I want her to understand the value of work, of earning what you receive." "I agree completely," Elizabeth said, surprising him again. "What do you propose?" "A trust fund for her education, administered by both of us. And—" He hesitated, then committed to the idea that had been forming in his mind. "I want to create a scholarship in Sarah's name. For students pursuing medical degrees. She never got to achieve that dream. Others should." Elizabeth's voice was thick with emotion when she responded. "James, that's perfect. I'd like to contribute to that as well." "There's one more thing," James said. "I've been thinking about what you said, about me giving up my dreams for Sarah. That wasn't entirely true. My dream was always a family, a home filled with love. Sarah was my dream. And now, Lily is." "You've done an incredible job with her," Elizabeth said softly. "But you were right about one thing. I did put my career ambitions aside. I played it safe for Lily's sake." He took a deep breath. "I've been working on a financial literacy program for underprivileged youth. It's just been a side project, but with your business connections—" "Say no more," Elizabeth interrupted, excitement in her voice. "The Parker Foundation would be proud to sponsor something like that. We could pilot it in schools across the city." For the first time in years, James felt the spark of professional passion reigniting. Not just securing a paycheck, but creating something meaningful, something that could help others. As the months passed, James's life transformed in ways he could never have anticipated that rainy night. The financial literacy program launched in 5 schools, with plans to expand statewide. Lily thrived at Westwood Academy, developing a particular interest in science that both James and Elizabeth enthusiastically encouraged. And the Sarah Mitchell Memorial Scholarship awarded its first grants to 3 promising medical students. James and Elizabeth developed a relationship unlike any he'd ever had, not romantic, but deeply connected through their shared love for Lily and their link to Sarah. Elizabeth's initial corporate iciness melted away completely in their private interactions, revealing a woman who had been as lonely in her way as James had been in his. On the anniversary of that fateful night, they sat together on James's porch, watching Lily examine bugs in the garden with the microscope Elizabeth had given her for her birthday. "Do you ever wonder what Sarah would think of all this?" Elizabeth asked, her voice contemplative. James considered the question carefully. "I think she'd be amused that her boss turned out to be her secret sister," he said with a small smile. "But mostly, I think she'd be grateful that Lily has family, that she's not alone." Elizabeth nodded, her eyes on her niece. "When I first found out about you and Lily, I was angry at my father for keeping Sarah from me, angry at the universe for taking her before I could meet her." She turned to James. "I had this elaborate plan to work you into a position where I could offer you a promotion that would require relocation, just so I could be near Lily without revealing who I was." James raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" Elizabeth laughed softly. "I've spent most of my life controlling everything around me. It was all I knew. But that night, watching you take care of me without judgment, without expecting anything in return, it made me realize how empty that kind of control is." She paused. "When I asked you about Sarah the next morning, I wasn't sure what would happen. I just knew I couldn't keep living a lie." "That question shattered everything I thought I knew," James admitted. "But sometimes things need to break before they can be rebuilt into something stronger." Lily came running up to them, clutching a jar with air holes punched in the lid. "Look what I found. I think it's a new species," she exclaimed, her eyes bright with the thrill of discovery. As they both leaned forward to examine her treasure, James felt a sense of peace settle over him. His life had indeed been shattered by Elizabeth's question that morning, but from those fragments had emerged a new life, richer and more complete than he could have imagined. That night, after Elizabeth had gone home and Lily was asleep, James took out the photo of Sarah that he kept by his bedside. "You wouldn't believe what's happened," he whispered to her image. "Your sister found us. She's nothing like you, and yet somehow, exactly like you in all the ways that matter." He could almost hear Sarah's laugh, could almost feel her hand on his shoulder approving of this unexpected turn of events. For the first time since her death, the memory brought more comfort than pain. "Life rarely gives us what we expect," Mrs. Hernandez had said. "Sometimes, it gives us what we need." A question that shatters your life might just be the very thing that allows you to rebuild it into something beautiful. If you found this story meaningful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the unexpected ways our lives can change in an instant. Remember, sometimes the most devastating moments lead to our greatest blessings, if we have the courage to walk through the shattered pieces towards something new.